Imperial Uncle. Chapter 22. But as soon as I finish saying that, I add, I just wanted to tell you. You don't need to say anything. As for what Rancy's reply would be, I can make a pretty good guess. Lu Tongyi stares fixedly at me, seemingly at a loss of a sudden. A moment passes before he says, oh. I never thought I'd actually end up saying it, and since I've said it, it's fine. Perhaps it's for the best, that I've said it now, at least the heavens, or I, have given myself this opportunity. I had thought I'd never say it, and now that I put it out in the open I'm actually feeling all the more open. So I think I may as well bluntly lay it all out. Chancellor Lu, there's no need for you to worry. I only said that out loud because it is rare for me to want to speak with complete honesty, as I do today. I know that you're a proper man, and such inclinations as cutting one's sleeve were never anything to be proud of, so what I said to you has likely displeased you. I'm truly very sorry. Neither do I know why I adore you so, Rancy, but I have never been able to let these feelings go. I blurted it out earlier and I'm having some regrets about that now. Once you're away from here, do not hesitate to forget everything that happened here today. And it would be well within the realm of reason for you to choose to distance yourself from now on and never want to have any dealings with me again. All this I say with my eyes fixed on the lake outside. And once I'm finished, I continue to stare out at the water. Lu Tongyi appears quite undisturbed, standing beside me, my heart hangs there in the air, spinning. I wait and I wait. Seemingly forever passes before I hear him go, oh. And again, nothing. Unable to help myself, I turn to look at him. He glances back at me as well. I tolerate the silence until I can no longer. Rancy, do you not have anything else to say to me? Lu Tongyi raises a brow. Prince Yang's heart already rests in Mount Wu, what need has he then, to sleep talk of Jiangnan in his dreams? I force myself to smile. You can rest easy, Chancellor Lu. I will never bring up this topic again. It's getting late. If this servant stay here any longer it may hinder your highness's rest. This servant should get going. Beyond the railing, mist swirls on the surface of the lakes, seeps through the creases of my clothes, a cold that clings to one's heart. Sure. I'll walk you. Lu Tongyi and I exit the water pavilion together. Dusk has arrived. Red clouds fill half the sky, the whole lake colored in evening. When we reach the pavilion where the mechanism for retracting the floating gallery is housed, I turn the stone crane. Amidst the clicks and clacks of machinery the gallery is again connected to shore. Rancy. Lu Tongyi turns his head, and comes to a stop. I give him a quick smile. Don't worry. Once we're away from here, I will never call you that again. Something in Lu Tongyi's expression shifts, as though he's about to say something, but he does not. At midnight, I stand outside my bedroom doors, watching a solitary moon, gazing at the cold stars, unable to sleep. Behind me, Chu Sun's footsteps come and go and come again, and finally gradually grow louder until he's at my side. Your Highness, the night is deep and dew has gathered on the leaves. You should sleep soon. Thereupon I go back inside with him. But even after lying down, I'm still finding it hard to fall asleep. By my ear, Chu Sun suddenly says softly to me, Your Highness, I want to go back to the House of Dusk. I turn onto my side. Beneath the covers, I take his hand. Ami, you don't want to keep this prince company. I can't help your highness with anything by staying, and I may even be inconveniencing you. I frown. Who says so? Chu Sun doesn't speak again. On the other hand, going back to the House of Dusk is a good thing for him. And so I sigh. Stay with me until tomorrow then. I'll get someone to take you back after breakfast. Chu Sun whispers, Thank you, your highness. The next morning, Chu Sun returns to the House of Dusk. My bed, that has been feeling a little fuller lately, feels empty again. I feel as though my heart is also emptier. A few days later Yunyu invites me to drink at Moonlight Pavilion once more. This time, it's in a secluded little courtyard. The two of us sit beneath the roof of the gallery. There's a touch of sadness to your expression, Your Highness. Did something happen lately that went contrary to your wishes? I raise my wine cup. Here this prince is smiling, yet you can discern sadness on my face. Someday you'll make a good successor to the Ministry of Justice, the Court of Judicial Review, or some fortune-telling stall on the street, Chief Yun. Yunyu shakes his head. Your Highness flatters me overmuch. Really though, you're only saying that because we have no mirror and you can't see your own face. Half smiling, he turns the cup over and over in his hands. I heard that Chu Sun returned to the House of Dusk a couple of days ago. Now, Chu Sun's hardly the type to throw a fit. Is it because you did something to break his heart? I rub at the space between my brows, and set down my cup. Chief Yun, whatever street gossip you may have picked up again, you may as well say it all at once. Grinning, Yunyu sips his wine and tells me, oh, it's nothing much, only that there's currently a rumor going around of your highness's inconstancy, how you've shifted your love to Chancellor Lu and threw away Sir Chu Sun without a second thought. This humber one used to think it was but a rumor, but judging by the look on your face today, how you have the entanglements of love written all over you, one cannot but conjecture anew. That's why this humble one asked, you see maybe it was a bit nosy of me. Please forgive this lowly one, Your Highness. I had foreseen Yunyu to have already learned of Chu Sun's return to the House of Dusk, and as for Rancy's visit that day and my bringing him to the water pavilion, Yunyu must have found out about that too. It would be out of character for him not to bring it up. Keeping my tone casual, I say to him, Chancellor Liu's visit to my house was exceedingly routine, nothing more. But as for why Chu Sun suddenly wanted to return to the House of Dusk, I really have no idea. It hasn't felt right to go see him since. I end on a sigh. Haven't you always been an expert at charming your way back into a person's graces? Just go see him, Your Highness, talk to him and I'm sure it'll all be fine. I try to appear unperturbed. Thank you for your compliments, Chief Yun. Speaking of which, did you invite me to dine because you're no longer mad at me? Day before last, in this very Moonlight Pavilion, I really have no idea what I said that may have offended, and you started acting differently as soon as I did. Did something this prince said touch upon a sensitive topic? Yunyu seems to freeze, but just for a moment, then he replies rather coolly, oh, if your highness hadn't mentioned it, this servant would have forgotten. Something was bothering me that day, and it caused my manners to lapse before you. Please do forgive me. I hasten to say, no matter. I didn't mean anything in mentioning it. As I'd only mentioned it to shut Yunyu up in the first place, I take this opportunity and change the subject, starting a conversation about something else. Half a jug of wine later, I feign nonchalance and ask him, this prince haven't been to the palace lately. How have things been at court? Yunyu's brows knit together. Not bad. On the surface everything seems peaceful, but, His Majesty, very likely knows something. He's on his guard. Yunyu stares at me. His Majesty hasn't summoned you in the past few days. I shake my head. He hasn't. Recently, there's been nothing but dead calm from Kichi's side, since I earnestly advised him at my estate, he hasn't summoned me before the throne. But on the contrary, rather than making me feel at ease, it's making me all restless wondering what on earth he's planning. Of course he'd be on his guard. We thought about that much while we were making plans. But they probably don't have any actual proof. Neither was there much movement from our military leaders and high officials of late. Once we're into the 5th month, then the fundamental stage is set. Even if he does find out there's nothing he can do about us. There's a furrow between Yunyu's brows. Probably so. He pours us each a drink. But, my father was informed that in the next few days, His Majesty may summon you as well as the other princes to the palace for a meeting. I wonder what the purpose of this meeting is. I'm a little surprised by this news. The Dowager Empress has always been rather rigorously guarded against me and the other princes, and in order to prevent us from forming an alliance, she has often favored and discriminated against one prince or the other. Other than New Year's and other grand occasions that we attend together, the times where I meet with the other princes to discuss matters of state are vanishingly rare. If this information proves true, then it really is hard to guess at Kijhe's intentions. Then I suppose I'll find out once I'm there. Yunyu gives me a look. I've been trying to advise you in this all this time, but still I must say it again, Lu Tongyi is one tricky character. You should keep your distance and be mindful not to fall for his trap. I can't help but laugh. Suiya, you worry too much. What trap could Lu Tongyi set for this prince, and whatever trap could this prince fall for? Ah, that reminds me, have you been faring well before the throne and at court lately? Yunyu gives me another look, and knocks back his drink to the last drop. And it is only at times like these that your highness will call me by my courtesy name. This servant is not used to hearing it. The servant need time to react. He stares at me, his smile looking a little forced. It seems your highness's affections for Chancellor Lu are rather deep indeed. I must say Yunyu's eyes really are exceedingly sharp. And what if that's true? This prince haven't lost my head so much that this prince can't read the terrain. Ultimately, we're not on the same boat. Sometimes, whom one can love and whom one cannot may just be predestined. Yunyu nods slowly, his eyes focused off and away, on something I cannot see. Very much so. It is quite likely predestined. He fills his cup again with wine, then drains it. I raise my cup as well, and before we know it, the few wine jugs we have stand empty. As the fourth jug runs dry, Yunyu rises and brings out a fifth one. Looks like he's come prepared. He's had a full ceramic jar of wine waiting inside the house. A few more cups, and sensing that my head is starting to feel heavy, I wave him off. Enough, enough, no more. As they say, drinking one's sorrows away only makes one sorrier. Let's just call it a day. Yunyu leans on the railing and shakes the wine jug at me. Once we've drunk 1,000 cups, drank enough to be fitting drunk, 1,000 cares will have been drunk away. That's pure sophistry. Besides, even if let's say this prince's affections for Chancellor Lu are not returned, and this prince have spun for myself a tangled web of love and hate, you're not drinking any less seriously than I. Don't tell me that this prince have guessed right, and you're also plagued by emotions you cannot placate. Wine jug in hand, a crease appears between Yunyu's brows, and he stares fixedly at me. Suddenly, he says, since we cannot drink our sorrows away, then why don't we try something else, your highness? He sets down the wine jug, and leaning on the railing, he gives me a smile. Why don't your highness and this humble one, two people with sorrows they cannot erase, help each other find some relief? End chapter. Imperial Uncle. Chapter 23. How would we find relief? I ask. Yunyu looks at me smilingly. I do wonder if it's because you've had your whole heart set on Chancellor Lu lately your highness can't even make sense of something so plain. I really don't get it. Yunyu stares at me for a moment, and rising, he comes to my side. An instant later, I'm paralyzed. I'm no fool. Of course I can catch on to what Yunyu means by what he said, and such jokes have been made between us before, but we were only ever joking around. This time though. Back in the day when I was a young man, I also often mistook flamboyance for distinguished flair, just the way Kitten and Kilai do today. As I recall, in one visit to a brothel, I went so far as to write a mildly lewd poem that didn't even properly rhyme. Mist dews, beating on cherries. Heavy droplets bend the banana leaf. Moon's reflection drowns in jade waters. Under a hibiscus veil we grow weary through one spring night. The poem seems utterly nonsensical now. In hindsight, I wish I could pretend I never wrote it. But back then, I was immensely proud of myself, and even wrote the poem onto the sheer bed veil and gifted it to the boy who was keeping me company. Of course he'd never have told me it was terrible, and when he took it, he looked rather touched. It matters not who we are, all young men were frivolous once. And now, at this very moment, with Yun Yu's lips on mine and our tongues entwined, by some curious impulse, the last two lines of this poem suddenly resurface on my mind. I have no idea why for. It may be for the flowers, still and wordless beneath the stairs, it may be for the breeze, how soft it breathes through the gallery, it may be for the faint scent of incense in my arms, clinging to Yun Yu's clothes. To tell the truth, whichever way you turn him, assess him without considering his disposition, in every aspect, Yun Yu is flawless. I know that he's not of my kind, and so it has never occurred to me to desire him, but right now I'm really finding it difficult to resist having such desires any longer. I draw out a single thread of reason as I'm about to drown in jade waters, and putting my hands on his shoulders, I push Yun Yu away a few inches. Taking a deep breath, I force myself to calm. Chief Yun, you shouldn't joke around about this. Yun Yu has eyes like a mist-enshrouded lake, corners ever so slightly curved. Your Highness, you stopped calling this lowly one, Suiya. One single sentence, a few scant words, they turn into an infinitesimal thread of silk, and scratch a circle around the depths of my heart. I force out a smile. Chief Yun, one more step and it won't be a joke anymore. And what's wrong with that? He smiles too. Either way, in regards to your Highness and his servants, a reputation has been confirmed long ago. Repute is one thing, reality is quite another. As I recall, this prince is hardly your type. We're just trying to find relief. Why quibble over details? I'm just afraid that if we don't quibble over details, our efforts to relieve anything may just accomplish the opposite. Sighing, I say to him, Suiya, I'm not blind. Something's on your mind today, I can tell. Yun Yu has a smile on his lips, none in his eyes, and a touch of something complicated is woven through his features, a bit like that proverb about someone finding a crack in a pot, and feeling as though nothing matters anymore, they smash it. You've bottled up things in your heart. I assume you must have problems you can't tell anyone, but you can't be cutting off your own nose to spite your face over it. Yun Yu barks out a laugh. Your Highness's heart is full of Chancellor Lu, so there's no room in there for anyone else. This lowly one shall refrain from gauchely forcing my way in. He frees himself from me and retreats a few steps away, my lap all at once cools. I rise after him. Even if there was no Rancy, would you call me Chinjun but once, Suiya? Steps away, Yun Yu stands next to a table, and he stares at me unblinking for moments before saying, this servant can't. Someday, when your Highness becomes your Majesty, and if you should become annoyed with this servant, that he had once dared call you by your name may just be considered an offense. And that's why, even if Yun Yu is to me as a single favorite strand of grass is to a rabbit, I may gnaw every last bit of old bark in the world to the quick, but I cannot begin to covet him. We're co-conspirators, guarded against each other, but in actual fact I'm plotting against him. If I can still manage to relieve my cares with him, then I shouldn't have the right to even be deemed human anymore. Yun Yu takes up the wine jug again, pours one cup, and drains it. Never mind. Reluctance is no good in such things. He looks over at me again, his smile spurious. Your Highness, is Lu Tongyi so wonderful? I sit back down, and clear my throat. Whether someone is wonderful or not is entirely subjective. He's pleasant to look at, and seems easy to get along with. Yun Yu nods, and says nothing else. An awkward silence falls between us. Feeling self-conscious, I start to find it hard to sit still. Rising, I say to him, there still are things this prince must do, so this prince will be heading home. Yun Yu soberly replies, please go ahead, Your Highness. This servant is going to stay a while longer. All right then. As I'm turning to go, from behind me, Yun Yu says, if His Majesty does summon Your Highness to the palace for a meeting, please make sure you pay attention. I turn back to say, don't worry. No matter what happens, His Majesty wouldn't be so rash as to actually arrest me, his Imperial Uncle. But Yun Yu used the words pay attention and not take care. It probably means that there's something funny about this meeting. Ultimately, Yun Tang's information proves handy. On the very next day, an order from the throne arrives first thing in the morning, summoning me to the palace for a meeting tomorrow. And the magnitude of this meeting seems rather grand. Aside from myself, the other imperial princes, paternal cousins of His Majesty, are also present. Prince Zong, Prince Chia, Prince Fu, Prince Xiao, Prince Lu, as well as myself, fill out the table of a banquet of 6 princes. End chapter. Imperial Uncle. Chapter 24. I wonder what this meeting where His Majesty called myself and the other 5 princes to the palace for is about. Though he is young, he's well versed in the art of statecraft. His conduct often exceeds one's expectations and he's never predictable. I've become habituated to laziness, convalescing at home for the past few days, so much so that putting on formal dress and a hair crown feels restrictive. Besides, it's nearly summer now, these layers upon layers of robes feel stiflingly hot, so I simply have to keep a fan in my sleeve so I can at least fan myself to keep cool while riding the palanquin. Upon arriving at the palace, the young eunuchs come to guide me to the Hall of Cultivating Virtue. It's a beautiful, secluded palace hall, not far from the imperial garden, spacious and cool inside. By the time I get there, Prince Chia, Qi Lai and Prince Lu are already seated. Prince Xiao is in poor health. Qi Lai, his heir, has practically been running the Prince Xiao estate for the past few years. Prince Xiao can't make it today, so as usual Qi Lai is here in his place. After Qi Lai has risen to give me his formal greeting, and I have exchanged greetings with my 2 older cousins Prince Chia and Prince Lu, I take my seat. The seat of honor in the Hall of Cultivating Virtue is His Majesty's throne 1, and the remaining 6 seats are placed 3 on each side facing each other. I was supposed to take the very last seat on the west side, but since Qi Lai is 1 generation younger and came in his father's stead, he gets to sit at the very end. So I'm pushed up the hierarchy by 1 and sit down between Prince Lu and Qi Lai. Just as I sit down and take out my fan to get some air, across from me, a furrow appears between Prince Chia's brows. All 5 of my cousins are far older than I, especially the eldest, Prince Zhong and Prince Chia. They're older even than my dad. These 2 have never much associated with me, and they've always thought little of the Prince Huai estate's conduct and that minor inclination of mine. As to Prince Chia, courtesy named Chengdian, his father was at odds with my father even back in the day. Allegedly their feud began between the former Princess Chia and former Princess Huai as they strove for imperial favor. The former Prince Chia, siding with Lucien and some others, repeatedly advised Emperor Tongguang to revoke my dad's military authority, to prevent him from plotting a rebellion. In order to diffuse Prince Chia's enmity against my dad, Emperor Tongguang planted Prince Chia's son, Chengdian, into my dad's army, and had my dad teach him the art of war and martial arts personally. But Chengdian was conceited and never gave in to my dad's instruction. Once, while my dad was back in the capital, Chengdian used his absence to launch a surprise attack on the barbarians without consulting anyone. In the end, he fell into a trap, lost over 1,000 soldiers, and he was punished by my dad in accordance with military law. The former Prince Chia went to my dad and pleaded for leniency, but my dad was uncompromising and did not acquiesce. He became even more hated by Prince Chia and his son, who thought the entire incident was planned by my dad to entrap Chengdian. Their feud just kept getting more solidified. Once Emperor Yingchang succeeded to the throne, my dad handed a part of his military power to Chengdian of his own accord, and recommended him for the commander-in-chief post in front of Emperor Yingchang. The former Prince Xie, Chengdian, and even Emperor Yingchang thought my dad was just putting on an act, and none of them appreciated his kindness at all. Even though the Prince Xie estate has never gotten along well with mine, Chengdian really is a loyal prince. When the Dowager Empress was pretending to cozy up to me, Chengdian thought I made myself above the law and controlled imperial politics, and it was anyone's guess just how I was going to persecute the loyalists, so in his rage he gave up what little bit of military authority that no one asked him to give up, and shut himself in his estate to write poetry to express his feelings all day long. One hears that, at one point, Prince Xie's expressive poetry was pasted all over the walls of the Prince Xie estate study. Among them, an epic called Song of the Old Goose was especially well known. In this poem, Prince Xie likened Kijhe to the sun, likened me to a dark cloud blocking the sun and the clear blue sky, and likened himself to a staunch and unyielding old goose. He firmly believes in karmic retribution, and thought Judgment Day would eventually come for the treacherous courtiers. A dark cloud can only obstruct the blue sky and the sun temporarily. Someday this foul influence will be swept away from the world to reveal well-ordered politics and long-reigning peace. Even if right now the old goose has had its wings broken by the hail, its feathers plucked clean by the squall brought on by these dark clouds, its head nearly buried under ice and snow, it will hibernate in a pile of withered grass, sit on an old tree branch and stare at the sky awaiting the day when the sun will shine on it again, so that all its plucked feathers will regrow, so it can fly high into the sky, soaring up above to be by the sun. Prince Xie compiled hundreds of long and short poems he wrote over the years into an anthology called Songs of the Grass Hut Goose. He got a few dozen printed, and gave them to those in the moral purity faction. My father-in-law Liu was one such recipient, and allegedly he was moved to tears upon reading it and did not eat for 2 days. Out of curiosity, I got myself a copy too. I was young and meddlesome then, and I had many thoughts after reading the Song of the Old Goose. I was unable to refrain from passing judgment. Wild geese live in the north during spring and summer, then fly south for autumn and winter. How can they ever have their wings broken by hail? Or be buried by snow? Only something like a sparrow would stay in the same place for all 4 seasons. I had said these words standing in a gallery of my own estate, and I have quite a number of spies among my servants. Not a day had passed before my words passed through the walls, and after a game of whispers, the entire capital became aware that Prince Huai was mocking Prince Xie, saying that the old goose was less than a sparrow. For a time many capital literati who thought themselves the only ones not rolling in the muck all rose up in righteous indignation, and one after the other they expressed themselves via poetry how the world has been turned upside down, for sparrows to run rampant, great geese forbidden to spread their wings, and what a scandal for sparrows to have the wherewithal to ridicule the tercel. Someone even drew a picture of a fat sparrow squatting on the back of a little rooster, with this inscription under it, looking down on the world with disdain. One of my servants brought this picture and some poems to me. Your Highness, those hypocritical pedants in the capital are mocking you. And what was I to do about it? If they wanted to mock me, then they were free to go ahead. For one must know that a pedant's mouth works like a flood. The more you try to stop them up, the more they overflow. So what else could I do but stare at that picture and say, the sparrow's round and fat. It's very cute. The little rooster is most resplendently drawn as well. Not bad. Not bad at all. Let them say what they want. When it comes to birds, to each his own. See, some people like tercels and great geese, but this prince is rather fond of the sparrow. Naturally, these words were again passed on by spies, then circulating among a few more mouths, it became a number of different rumors. Rumor number 1, Prince Huai said the sparrows could eat their fill and the great geese and tercels starved, so the sparrow was stronger than the great geese and the tercel. Rumor number 2, Prince Huai likened himself to a prosperous bird, saw his own fondness for pretty little roosters as something to be proud of, and those prone to mockery were nothing more than flies to him, and there was also one rumor that said Prince Huai likened himself to a sparrow, and said it was much better than being one of those noisy songbirds. How humiliating, how slanderous it is to insinuate that the righteously indignant are chirping songbirds. These rumors of course made indignant literati even more indignant. And so, into a record of my persecution of the loyalists, yet another colorful page had been added. Which is why Prince Jia is still being able to force himself to exchange a few words of pleasantry when he sees me is already a great show of his broad-mindedness, forbearance, and good breeding. He's always been old-fashioned. He probably thinks of my taking out a fan to fan myself in the hall of virtuous cultivation as extremely improper and disrespectful, displaying just how much I look down on that emperor nephew of mine. Prince Lu and Prince Jia are pretty close, and he's never thought much of me, either. Good thing I have a Qilai sitting beside me as well. I chat with him for a while. Qilai asks me, "Has Prince Dai been by to see you in the last couple of days, Imperial Uncle?" "He has not," I reply. "At least I haven't doted on Kitten for nothing. Since I got hurt, he's been coming over practically every day, and every time he did he brought with him many things, and actually managed to not once take anything away with him. Everything he brought over was part of the valuable collection he usually expropriates, such as a medicine god's jade ornament that can cure sickness and helps one avoid impending doom, a wine gourd that was used by Dr. Hua Tuo, a medicine pot given to the Hanwu Emperor by Dong Fangshuo that can double the efficacy of the medicine it decocts, and so on. Of course, not a single one of these things is authentic, and anyway he's bought most of them with my money, but still, he's giving them to me sincerely thinking them authentic, so in spite of that, I'm happy and feel rather moved. In the last 2 days though, he really hasn't been by. Oh, from what I heard, some Lingnan merchant has been planning to sell him a set of items lately. Among them are the oil lamp Chukeo Hongming used in his life extension ritual, the qin he played when he deployed the empty city stratagem, a cow horn comb once used by Lady Meng, and the bundle cloth Zhao Zilong wrapped a in. My heart suddenly does a little somersault. Sounds like there are lots of items. Anyway, from what I've heard, they'll likely cost a few 100,000 silver taels. I think my face must have turned green already. Silently, I ponder whether I should tell Yun Tang and Wang Qin if we can just get this rebellion over with in the next couple of days. Qilai tries to console me, "Imperial Uncle, you don't have to worry so much. Prince Dai's improved a lot lately. Right now he's merely in negotiations with the merchant. He may not necessarily make the purchase. It would be strange if he doesn't." I tell Qilai, "There's business I must see to in the estate for now, so how about you tell him this in my stead? Chancellor Lu knows about this sort of thing, so make sure he invites Chancellor Lu along when he goes to view them so he can be more sure. The only one who can save my estate's treasury from Kitten's spending is Lu Tongyi. Unfortunately, after what happened in the water pavilion that day, it'd be awkward for me to step in and ask, so I have no other option but to have Kitten ask him himself." While we're chatting, Prince Zong and Prince Fu arrive in succession, and take their seats after we exchange greetings. Prince Zong stares at the fan in my hand. "Do you not think it inappropriate to use a fan in this hall, Prince Hui?" I close up the fan and put it back in my sleeve. "Thank you, Prince Zong, for the reminder. It was negligent of me to show such disrespect." Prince Zong stares at me some more, but doesn't say anything else. Prince Zong, like Prince Chia, has never thought much of me. But his reason for not thinking much of me is not the same. Prince Zong, courtesy named Chen Yuan, is the oldest among us princes. He is loyal, generous, and honest, and in his early years he had acted as a deputy under my father's command. Even though he's older than my father, he has always held the young imperial uncle in high regard. After my father passed away, he even looked after my mother and I. Later, when I became afflicted with that certain predilection, Prince Zong was furious many times. He lectured me in a rage, yet I was unrepentant despite his efforts. Thereafter Prince Zong cut off contact with the Prince Hui estate. He's always thought me utterly devoid of accomplishments, and that I've disgraced this Prince Huai title my father left behind. On top of that, I've even caught myself a despicable habit. That's why every time he sees me he will show an expression of the deepest sorrow. Whenever I see that expression of his, I'll more often than not feel a bit guilty too. He's deeply sorrowful, I'm uncomfortable, both of us are stressed out, so unless it's absolutely necessary, Prince Zong and I don't really see each other. After I put away the fan, the hall's atmosphere grows ever more frigid. Fortunately, right then, His Majesty arrives. End chapter. Imperial Uncle. Chapter 25. Kijhi looks solemn, and a slight furrow sits between his brows. Apparently this meeting concerns something rather serious. Only after all the kowtowing is done, and I and the other princes retake our seats, does Kijhi begin to speak. The reason we've invited you all here today is because there is a matter that concerns the state but is difficult to discuss publicly at court assembly, so we wanted to consult with my imperial uncles first. We all respectfully await his next words with bated breath. Kijhi pauses a moment, then he says, "A few days ago, the kingdom of Nahe dispatched an emissary here to negotiate peace. They're willing to offer 2 cities, an annual tribute, and become vassal to our empire for perpetuity." As soon as these words leave his mouth, all the other princes present look pleased, especially Prince Zong and Prince Chia. The kingdom of Nahe has been at war with our empire for many years. We've been fighting since my father was young, and the fighting continued through successions of emperors, until their king passed away and his only daughter succeeded the throne. At first we thought with a woman in power we may be able to gain some leverage, so readying the drums and banners, we immediately sent troops against them, but none of us could have imagined that their teenaged girl of a queen would turn out not to be a pushover at all, and no weaker than any man. She led the army personally and met us on the battlefield, beheaded one of our great generals, and our countries were caught up in a conflict once more. But a little barbarian kingdom can hardly endure a decades-long war. Since the armistice 5 years past, they no longer harass our frontier forces. I hear that they've even employed a few Han Chinese literati to work as court officials, and their kingdom is recuperating. This time, they've dispatched an emissary to negotiate for peace, going so far as to offer their allegiance. It's definitely good news. But as my emperor nephew looks so grave, I fear these peace talks really aren't so simple. The kingdom of Nahe must have put forward some condition. I say cautiously, since your majesty began holding court independently, your rule has been benevolent, and the empire enjoys peace and prosperity. It's perfectly logical for a small barbarian kingdom to capitulate of their own accord to swear allegiance to your majesty's brilliant wisdom and our celestial empire. But barbarians are often deceitful. The servant wonder if they have made some indecorous demand. As I expected, Kijhi sighs solemnly. That is precisely what's giving us a headache. The kingdom of Nahe's emissary has put forward a request, and we have no idea how we should respond. If it can give your majesty a headache, then it must be vexing indeed. Could it be that in exchange for their annual tribute, they expect us to present them with gold and silk yearly? Or do they want to learn some agricultural techniques, or to borrow some rations and seeds, or something along this vein? All these barbarian kingdoms are unskilled in the cultivation of grain, and have always greatly admired our techniques of the weaving and dyeing of silk. Then I follow this with a joke, good thing the old king of Nahe passed on long ago, otherwise they'd want to form a marriage alliance and marry a princess. At least that queen wouldn't go so far as to bring that up and demand a prince from us. Kijhi lifts his gaze and stares right at me. Slowly, he nods. A hush falls over the palace hall. Kijhi, still looking solemn, heaves a long sigh. Imperial Uncle, unfortunately, you guessed it quite right. The kingdom of Nahe's emissary said their queen regnant is just in the prime of her youth and does not yet have a consort. She has always thought highly of the talent and pleasing appearance of the men of our celestial empire. She desires a king consort to share the throne, rule jointly over her land, and as a show of good faith in her pledge of allegiance and peace. My cousin princes and I as well as my nephew Qilai are all quite shocked. Prince Chiu shakes his head sorrowfully. The behavior of barbarian women is truly appalling. Prince Fu shakes his head as well. Preposterous. Utterly preposterous. Are they suggesting that, in the entire kingdom of Nahe, they were unable to find a single man fit to marry the queen? Prince Zong frowns. The men of Nahe are short and stout. They truly cannot be compared to the men of our empire. Prince Lu says, there has only ever been alliance princesses, surely our dynasty is not going to produce an alliance husband. If this deed is passed on to later generations, it's bound to give them a good laugh. The older princes seem to abhor the idea, but judging from my emperor nephew's divine countenance, I think he just may be leaning towards the idea of giving the queen an alliance husband. Now happens to be a critical juncture, and if I'm to go along with his majesty, then first of all he won't suspect a conspiracy, and second of all, when my great undertaking is successfully accomplished, what's said today will be added to the score. Won't loyalty on top of more loyalty only make a positive? And so I begin to speak, in this servant's opinion, if we really do agree to a marriage alliance, it won't necessarily be a bad thing. The other princes all turn to me. Prince Zong frowns, Prince Chiu laughs derisively, Prince Fu is the only one who deigns to give me the time of day. Prince, why do you say so? Since their queen is willing to seek a marriage alliance, then one can assume she sincerely admires the men of our celestial empire. She has even pledged to share her throne. Even though the queen is a barbarian, all women are yielding by nature, and if she has a husband, she will naturally yield to her husband. If we do send her an alliance husband, then it would be no different than having the kingdom of Nahe within our grasp. Any children they have in the future will be of our celestial empire's bloodline as well. We may then be able to merge Nahe into our territories without sacrificing a single soldier. By the looks on the other princes' faces, they all seem to object to this idea, but none speak up to refute me. Kijhi mutters to himself for moments before he says, your argument makes a lot of sense, Imperial Uncle. We have also considered the same line of reasoning, and that's why we couldn't make up my mind. Prince Fu says, and if we're really going to choose someone to be the king consort of Nahe, whom should we choose? Prince Lu says, the barbarian woman is at the very least a queen. The only men who can be a proper match for her can't be less than a son of the emperor, an heir to a prince, or a son of a major official. Prince Zong says, the queen of Nahe is in her 20s. All the Nahe women are dark-skinned, but I've heard that the queen is considered pretty. All the young princes and heirs are either already betrothed, married, or too young. I fear none are suitable. Prince Fu nods. And thus it seems we can only choose among official sons. His Majesty may have just convened this prince's forum so that one of them would offer up a son in conformance to their fealty to the state. But these wily old foxes have weathered the storm of politics for many years. One single line from Prince Zong and he's managed to shield all of the princes and heirs. Prince Fu says, us older subjects are not quite so familiar with the major officials' sons. Prince Huai and Qilai probably know them better than we do. He sweeps his gaze over Qilai and I, and it is a rather meaningful sweep as it sweeps over me. Qilai has yet to take a wife. When we were discussing who would make a good candidate for an alliance husband earlier, he sat next to me without making a peep, probably quietly anxious. Now that Prince Zong has guaranteed his safety with a single line, he's full of energy again. He laughs. There's no need to think hard about which official's young sons are most exceptional. There's a common saying in the capital and it sums things up quite succinctly, who says greatness never comes in pairs. Just look at Chancellor Lu and Minister Yun. Chancellor Lu Tongyi, Minister Yun Yu. Qilai adds, Chancellor Lu is the imperial court's pillar, so of course he's out of the question. Quiet shrouds the hall until I cannot keep quiet anymore. Yun Yu isn't suitable either. We must look for another candidate. Prince Zong, Prince Chia, Prince Fu, Prince Lu, as well as Kijhi's eyes all turn to me. He lifts an eyebrow. Oh. In light of his family background, appearance, talent, and scholarship, Yunyu would be a top candidate. Why not him? I reply, there are multiple reasons that point to his unsuitability. First of all, Yunyu is sharp, and does what he pleases. A king consort candidate should best be tolerant, have a gentle disposition, and be someone who can woo a queen. Second of all, Yunyu is a bit of a libertine. How can a queen be the kind of woman who can tolerate sharing her husband? Only a faithful gentleman will do. Thirdly, Yunyu is Yun Tang's son. That point alone presupposes the need for detailed consideration. He stares at me, as though lost in his thoughts. Prince Ji laughs scornfully. These shortcomings that you mentioned happen to contradict one another just so, Prince Why? You say Yun Tang's son is a libertine, but wouldn't a libertine know best how to charm women, show tenderness, woo a queen? And the third thing you said seems to make insinuations, but to the best of my knowledge, you've always been close to the Yuns, and are often seen out and about with the son of the Yuns. It makes one wonder. I reply, I have nothing to say against those arguments, I'm merely doing as much as a subject should do, in saying what I should say. Ultimately, everything is up to His Majesty. I turn my attention to the throne faithfully. He rises, and sighs again. There's one more thing. We weren't planning to say it. When Nahe's emissary brought up their desire for a marriage alliance, they designated a specific candidate by name. The other princes and I, and my nephew Qilai as well, are all quite shocked again. He turns to me, and clasps his hands behind his back. The emissary said that the queen favors men who are a little bit older, especially someone who is tactful, with good breeding, and is considerate. For instance. He is looking right at me. I'm suddenly struck with an ominous feeling. For instance, someone such as our Prince Why? A hush falls on the hall once more. I speak up sternly at once, Your Majesty, this servant is a cut sleeve. Among my many strong suits, tact, good breeding, and being considerate are indeed some of the more obvious ones. It hasn't occurred to me that even so far off in a foreign land, their queen has somehow got wind of this. But what a shame this preference of mine can never be turned back around in this lifetime. He continues to stare at me expressionlessly. The emissary added that their queen knows that our Prince Why is a cut sleeve. But the queen believes that this is because our women aren't good enough, and that's given you no other option but be a cut sleeve. She has the confidence that she can turn you from a cut sleeve into not a cut sleeve. This, could my deeds have spread so far and wide? His eyes don't move from me. He continues, and the envoy also said that the queen wants him to make sure he passes on this message to Prince Why. She wants to ask you, do you still remember the vow you made at the foot of a small bridge outside the city walls, when all that afternoon the rain came down soft like fine silk? The hall grows even quieter, and those meaningful glances and meaningful expressions have me quite lost. He sighs. Imperial Uncle, we merely wanted to ask you, however did the Queen of Nahe make a vow with you at the foot of a small bridge outside the city walls on an afternoon when it rained soft like fine silk? I tell him with infinite earnestness, Your Majesty, this servant really is a cut sleeve, and have never been to the frontier regions, and this servant was even less likely to have ever been to Nahe. He heaves a long sigh. Then Imperial Uncle, are you telling us that the queen met with you at the foot of a bridge, made a vow with you in silk soft rain in a dream? End chapter.